Hello YouTube. I've hired a car for the weekend. I hired what was supposed to be sort of a mid-sized car, and then when I arrived on Friday to pick the vehicle up, I got given this. I am driving a Hyundai i40 estate, which is massive. Utterly massive. I've never driven a car as enormously long as this is, because it goes back a really long way. So this video, essentially, this video is going to be a review of the Hyundai i40. Yeah, if you've no interest in the Hyundai i40, probably not worth watching. If you know anything about it, watch it, you might learn something. Could be interesting, could be funny, won't know until you watch. And with that said, I'll begin. So the car that I'm driving is the i40 estate with the 1.7 litre turbo diesel engine. And having driven it for the last 2.5 days, to and from various places in London, outside London, on the motorway, elsewhere, I can comfortably say that this car is designed to be a highway cruiser. I mean, it's a large, comfortable car, it's got very good sound insulation. It's very quiet inside the cabin, even at 70 miles an hour. Very spacious, very comfortable, very much designed to make your life as comfortable as possible. And at 70 miles an hour on the motorway, you just put on the cruise control and you just go, and everything is fine. It's very, very easy to drive, very satisfying to just sit there and just let the world sort of waft past. Now, it's not the quietest car inside. I've been in quieter cars. The Jaguar XE is significantly quieter, has much better audio insulation. The Tesla Model S is also quieter, not just because it doesn't have an engine. Road noise wise, the audio insulation is better in the Model S too. Both of those, however, are significantly more expensive than this. This is a Hyundai i40, it doesn't really compare. It's going to be cheaper, but they're the only cars of sort of vaguely comparable size that I've driven recently, so those are the only comparisons I can really make. The 1.7 litre engine is perfectly serviceable. It's not particularly fast, but it's plenty fast enough for what this car would be used for. It's ideal as a sort of sit on the highway and cruise for miles and miles and miles. It's absolutely ideal for that purpose. The car has a sport button, which I'll talk about that later. But as a highway cruiser, it's absolutely perfect. It's one of the by far, like, it's just a pleasant place to be when on the highway. So yes, it's very much a highway cruiser, but that doesn't mean that's not to say that it's not capable elsewhere. Despite being a 1.7 litre turbo diesel, essentially barge, it's pretty good, and I enjoy it a great deal. It's actually kind of fun to drive. There's quite a lot of torque and there's a decent amount of power there, so no, it's good. The turbo certainly helps a great deal. In terms of equipment, this is probably one of the best equipped cars I've driven in recent times. It's got pretty much everything I could imagine as being necessary. So the driver's side seat is multi-way adjustable electronically, which is really nice. The passenger seat is not. Passenger seat is manually adjusted, which is a bit of a shame. It'd be nice if they were both electronic, but you know, that's not the end of the world. glove box is fairly spacious, not as spacious as you would think given the enormous size of the dashboard, but it's spacious enough. There are quite a lot of things to play with, quite a lot of toys. This has automatic wipers, automatic headlights. I have the car that I have has the sat nav in the display on the dash, dual climate control, you know, all of the sort of standard executive car type additions, which for Hyundai is actually pretty nice. It's got an electronic. Mine has the electronic parking brake with auto hold, which I thought I would hate, but I've already gotten so used to that now I just I stop somewhere and then I wait for the auto hold thing to go green, and then I'm just like, oh, okay, cool, that's done, and it doesn't even bother me that there isn't really a physical handbrake. The traditionalist in me would like there to be a physical handbrake because what happens when your battery runs out and so on, but I accept that electronic handbrakes are sort of the way forward and what's happening these days, and actually this one's quite, I like the auto hold stuff, it's very nice. This also, obviously, like so many modern cars, has the ability to turn itself off if you're stuck at traffic lights, and this is one of the more efficient systems that I've seen. It works within milliseconds of you taking your car out of gear and your foot off the clutch. It's instantaneously just off, and likewise when you put your foot back on the clutch, before you've even depressed it the tiniest bit, the engine's already started and it's ready for you to go off. So I've had some terrible experiences with those systems before, but this one's really good, and makes a big difference. Being a diesel, it's got quite a lot of oomph on the low end, but it's not really designed to be sporty. I mean, it's an executive car and an estate at that, so not really designed for that, but it's fun to drive. I enjoy it. Fuel economy wise, I've done a huge variety of driving. I've been doing motorway driving through London, country lane driving, and my fuel economy is currently at 42.3 miles per gallon, which for a diesel is probably not great. I would sort of be hoping for more than 50, but it's had a pretty hard set of roads to be driving through. I drove into London today at sort of an average speed of about 5 miles an hour. It's London at sort of the speed that you drive at. So given that, I'm not so bothered about the fuel economy, and I reckon that if you were just solely using it as a highway cruiser, you would be getting easily in the 60s without too much of a challenge. My fuel economy went up from 42 to 42.3 just from doing a few miles on the M25, so I'm sure if you were doing proper highway mileage, you would very, very quickly end up with economy in the low 60s. Yeah, so I would say if you want a highway cruiser, then this is certainly a good choice. I'm not sure whether you'd need the estate. As an estate, the back is very far away, obviously, it's an estate, but this comes with the rear view camera, which is enormously helpful. It would be and front and rear parking sensors would be almost impossible to park otherwise because it's so massive. And I'm not used to cars quite this large, but despite its size and despite everything else, I've actually really enjoyed it. So the other thing about this is, being an estate, it has an utterly enormous boot. This car has has a little divider that you can pull up from a little metal stripe, which allows you to sort of divide off the boot, which is helpful if you've got dogs, I suppose. And obviously the standard pull over the top of the estate so that luggage doesn't fly upwards over into the passenger compartment. The car fits 5 people in easily. I've been ferrying people around most of the weekend, and 5 people fit very easily into the car, which is very nice. Those in the rear seats get access to air vents, and there seems to be quite a lot of leg room back there. So it seems like if you need to go somewhere with the kids and the dogs and the luggage, you'll be able to fit all of them in here relatively easily, which is pretty good. So one other thing I want to talk about is what this car looks like. It looks like this. I personally think that the Hyundai i40 is actually one of the most attractive cars I've seen in recent years. I love the swoopiness, I like all the angularness, I like that it doesn't look aggressive, but it just looks kind of sharp. It looks like a proper executive car. I sort of feel how one of those should look. It looks good. I think it looks fabulous. The estate, I'm actually kind of partial to the end of the back here. The only thing I would say is that it feels a bit like they've just stretched the regular car, which, I mean, that's essentially what they've done, but it sort of feels a lot more obvious that that's what they've done, and I think the regular car looks better. But the estate is it's still pretty. It's a very pretty car. It works from all the angles. Mine is in a sort of slate grey colour, which is really nice colour. It looks fabulous. Yeah, I think it's very nice outside. Inside, I would say still, I would say as well. Inside is very well laid out. It's very well organised. Everything's sort of mostly where I would expect it to be. The only thing that's not quite where I would expect it to be is the rear window demister, which is more on the passenger side than it is on mine. So I sort of have to lean across the centre console, which is, in a car this size, is quite a long way in order to press that button. It's actually next to the heating controls for the passengers' climate control. So it's kind of the opposite side of the car, which is a little bit odd. All the other controls are very well laid out in places that make sense. So it's a very straightforward car to be able to find everything. Heated seat buttons are exactly where you'd expect them to be. Yeah, everything is pretty much exactly where you would expect, which is very nice for a car that I've never driven before. Makes things an awful lot easier to find. So the last thing I really want to talk about with this car is what it's like to drive on country roads. There's quite a lot of country roads in Britain. It's probably going to be at least some of your drive. So I figure it's worth covering. And also, I like driving on country roads. Country roads are fun. And I enjoy driving for fun, so it's always worth covering what this is like for that sort of thing. So I've been driving it around the Surrey Hills and the South Downs for the last hour or so, and I have to say, it's really fun, considering that I'm driving the estate and that the estate is massive. The only thing I will say is that the size does mean that I've tended to stick to the larger roads. Normally I'd be quite happy to nip down tiny little back alleys and go and explore, see what I can find, but actually I don't feel particularly inclined to do that, given that the size of this car and how long it is and wide. So I've tended to stick to the more sensible roads, but it's been fun. It's an enjoyable car to drive. There's decent enough power there that it's kind of entertaining. Steering feel is a little whirly, so there's not a huge amount of feedback from the wheels. When parking once or twice, I've lost where the wheels are. I've had no idea what position the wheels are in, and occasionally steering is a little bit it's just kind of a little bit woolly, which is fairly standard for a car this size. It's designed to be comfortable to drive. The gear shift is similarly a little bit woolly. Second gear is particularly woolly. I'm not sure if that's just this car or if that's the i40 in general, but getting the car into second is almost feels a bit like a challenge. The rest of the gear shifts are relatively smooth, but it all feels a little bit woolly, really, changing gear. Again, kind of goes with the territory of it's an executive car. It's not really designed to be driven like a sports car. There is a sport button. Having tested the sport button over the last hour or so, I actually prefer driving with the sport button off. The sport button it's supposed to add weight to the steering feel, make the steering more sharp, so it's in comfort mode at the moment. So the sport button's meant to make the steering feel a little heavier, but all it actually really does is make the steering feel a bit like you're turning through treacle. It makes it more difficult to turn, and it makes it less fun by a significant margin, because you turn the wheel, but it needs quite a lot more effort to achieve the same thing as you were previously doing. And it sort of feels like the wheels are stuck in treacle while you're attempting to turn. So I would recommend leave sport mode off. Beyond the steering, I've actually not noticed any difference at all from sport mode. So given that all it seems to do is make the steering more heavy and not a lot else, I would leave sport mode off, even if you're just going out for fun. The steering in its default mode and comfort is I've not had any problems with it at all. I actually think it's plenty weighty enough. There's no additional feel if you turn sport mode on or anything, so there aren't really any benefits to it, so I would just leave it off. For a car this size, it's remarkably agile. I suspect in part due to the turbo diesel, which is actually a remarkably fun engine. It's got an acceptably good amount of power. It certainly feels like stuff is actually happening when you put your foot down. The endless gear indicator telling you should probably shift up into 6 gets fairly tedious after a while, but I've just sort of learned to ignore that. It's certainly a fun car to drive, considering its size. So, my conclusions on the Hyundai i40 are, it's an excellent vehicle. I wasn't really expecting much, but I am pleasantly surprised in every way. It's very well spec'd. It's very nice to drive, nice to look at, nice to be inside, and as a highway cruiser, it's certainly an excellent choice. It's not really designed as a sort of fun to go and blast about in the middle of the countryside, not compared to, for example, the MX-5 that just drove past, but it is certainly not exactly completely incapable of that either. I've been having a fun time driving around the countryside with it for the last few hours. So yes, I would recommend the Hyundai i40. If you like this video, like and subscribe and let me know in the comments, and if you didn't like the video, also let me know in the comments. Tell me what you didn't like. I can't improve if I don't know what's wrong. I'm still obviously fairly new to this, but I'm learning all the time and getting used to trying a lot of different things. So yeah, let me know, and there'll be some more videos soon. Yeah, so thanks very much for watching. Bye.